Today we're going to talk about a method to resolve conflict in your relationships, whether that be intimate relationships, whether that be business relationships, whether that be family, whether that be friends, pretty much anyone. And so there is a structure that I have learned and that I want to give to you, and that it seems to have helped me tremendously in my life. And it seems to be working really, really well in my relationships to maintain those relationships and to resolve conflict and actually make them better. But first of all, my name's Steve, and I live in Baja, beautiful Baja. And besides being an entrepreneur, I've also spent the last 10 years running men's groups and doing what's called conscious relationship training so that I could advise and counsel people and actually use this information to make my life better. And so now I do retreats for men and women, and I have groups here where I help people get better lives through various processes, shadow work, emotional intelligence exercises. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, then you've come to the right place. For more on that, you can check my website at theheroformula.org. Anyway, so you're having a conflict. We're always having conflicts. Relationships are really, really important in life. And you would actually say, because humans are social beings, that without good, solid relationships, our lives kind of suck. They're less than what they could be. They're less deep, and people develop anxieties. They develop, they feel isolated, they feel lonely, and generally you get a miserable life unless you have some really good relationships. That has been something that's been an eye-opener for me over the last 10 years of doing this work, and I've realized that there's a good process that you can do in order to save your relationships and to get through conflict. So let's get going on that right now. So the first thing is, when you come in conflict with someone, usually it's something to do with your ego, something that you think they have done wrong and you have right, and they believe maybe you have done wrong and they are right. And this is where we get into a lot of problems with others, is when we're in this sort of ego mind of I'm right and you're wrong. So, or the first step in the approach to resolving a problem with a relationship is really to get to understand the other person's perspective and not just your own. And so that first process looks something like, and this is typically what we do, and we call it a clearing process, is you sit down with someone in private in a place that's quiet where you can be alone and uninterrupted for at least 20 minutes or so, and you get them to explain what the problem is for them. And the key part of this is you want them to use the words I as much as possible and not use the words you, and say you did this and you did this and you did this. That's not going to get you anywhere. What you want them to do is speak from an ownership perspective and speak from what you felt. I felt this and this and this when this happened. When you did this, I felt this. And really get them to own their feelings for what was going on and not project onto you and blame you for creating these feelings. And so you, as the person that's sitting opposite to them, what your goal is to be able to, once they've explained themselves, your goal is to rephrase and tell them what you heard until they're completely satisfied with your explanation of their feelings and how they felt and what went on for them. And then you just reverse that. Whereas you are saying, I felt this in the situation, I felt this, I felt like this. You could even say things like, I wanted this, I would have wanted this to happen, that sort of thing. And you can give them the opportunity to do that as well. And then they take the opportunity to tell you what they heard you say till your complete satisfaction, till you're like, you got it. That's exactly how I felt in this conflict. This is exactly what I thought was going on. Once you've done that, that's the first step. You've established that you have heard what they've said, they have heard what you said, and it's clear what's going on. The next part of this is where actually, if you don't have a lot of time, you could literally end it at that without trying to say, oh, and now I'm right and you're wrong. Because everyone has a different perspective. We all, based on our own feelings, based on our environment, based on our mental capacity, based on how we project, how we perceive things, we all have our own way of thinking of something, and that's what makes us think we're right. And the other person has their own way of thinking, their own emotions, all of these things that are influencing the way that they think, and that's why they think they're right. And so there's naturally going to be differences in that. And so what this exercise is understanding that difference and what it is and where that person is coming from. And then you could just leave it at that for now and going, oh, wow, now I understand where you're coming from. Because you don't want to get back into, oh, well, I understand where you're coming from, but I'm still right. Because they're not going to hear it. And that's not how you resolve conflict. You want to be able to be like, we're both right. We're both right and we're both wrong. We both have our own evaluation of the situation, and this is where we're at. From there, then you can offer the opportunity to say something like, I will own. Because once you have an understanding of a person's perspective and how they felt in the situation, you're going to realize that you might have done some things to create sort of the wrong impression. Or you might have said something that was a little off color or inappropriate. Or you might have misled them in some sort of way. And this is the opportunity for you to say, you know what, I'll own that, I didn't communicate enough, or I didn't communicate properly, or I'm owning that I got angry in this situation because I felt like I was being attacked, that sort of thing. And you own your own feelings that way. And then you give them the opportunity to do the same thing. Then, once you're done that, and that's all clear, then you can go in a situation where you say, and again, each person goes, something about you that reminds me of me is. And so basically what you're saying is you're saying to this person, I see in you characteristics that remind me of me. And I'm just letting you know. So for example, something in you that reminds me of me is that you get quite angry in these situations and you raise your voice. Something in you that reminds me of me is you're very passionate about making sure that you're heard. Something about you that reminds me of me is that you can quickly react to something if you feel like you're not being listened to or you're not being heard. Stuff like that. And then you give the other person the chance to say the same thing. And then once you're done that stage, then you get into the reason that you are speaking to this person right now and that you are in a relationship with them right now, which is something I like about you is. And literally, you tell them what you like about them and why you would actually even want to sit down and talk to them and go through this, and why you got into a relationship with them in the first place. Because there is a reason, and it's because you liked something about them. And then you give them the opportunity to do the same thing. And then once you're done that, you are going to find yourself in a different place. You are going to find yourself more connected. You're going to find yourself more understanding of their position. And the whole idea of this is not to be right. It's to be able to understand how the person in front of you could interpret the way that the things that you say or do, and find them somehow, disagreeable or a conflict or an issue. And then you've got the ability to own, you can even own how you're going to change what you do so that you can take into consideration their feelings next time. And they could do the same thing for you. And so the last part about this, and this is done, last part about this is you may find yourself in a situation where you're in a relationship with a person and you try and go through this process and they can't. They have a really, really difficult time hearing what you said and talking about it and getting to the point where you're like, I see this, or you have a really hard time doing that. It can be the same thing. And this is where the ego can come in at any point in time in this process, in this conflict resolution progress, and destroy the whole thing on your side and on their side. And that you really have to be aware of, because it's something in them or it's something in you that you haven't resolved and that you're like sticking to, and that you're like, I want to be right. This is what I want. And then it's your problem. And if it's for them, if they can't resolve it, then it's their problem. And then you might have a bigger problem in your relationship, and you might find on the odd occasion that it just doesn't work for that person. And then you sort of end that process, or you have to end it early, and then either come back to it at another time, or literally that could be the end of your relationship, because unless you find some sort of compromise with them and an understanding, then there's going to be resentment that gets built up. And the idea of these processes is to resolve that resentment so you feel better, and that you can have you basically have a mechanism to continuously work through any conflicts that you have and come to a place of, this is what I like about you, I've heard you, and I see how you're like me, and also, is there room for us still to have a relationship? And sometimes there won't be. But if it's your ego that's getting in the way, then that's a big problem. And if it's their ego that's getting in the way, then, it's as simple as you're accepting them the way they are and to have a relationship with them, or you're potentially not. Or you're accepting them, a portion of them, where you can have a relationship with them, or you're able to really, really see who this person is and how you would work with them in the future, and then be able to find a way to do that yourself, or eventually maybe there's just not room for that, and that's potential too. So, but there's a lot of room between I want an absolute 100% relationship with this person, or no relationship at all. There's a lot of room in between there. And this sort of process really helps you get closer to someone else and resolve your differences. And I love it for the relationships that I have, and I hope it works for you. And that is it for today. Any questions? Hit me. Thanks for listening.